Bishop, we're living in a time right now where anyone who speaks out against the mob gets crushed. And it seems to be particularly difficult for members of the Black community to speak out against Black Lives Matters, even if there is anything that you disagree with it, anything that you disagree with about it. You're so brave to be educating us all in some of these facts that we might not be aware of. How are you today, Bishop?
I am doing great here this afternoon here in New York City, and I'm very excited in Black Lives Matter. I said this, been saying this for the past week. They will eventually be destroyed, just like Antifa. So we have to look out for that, because what they, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, are doing is trying to subvert American law in order to bring in a socialist republic state, which we call a communistic caliphate, but it's not going to work here today.
Yeah, I agree with you completely, Bishop. And I think that it's, you've told us how these psychological operations are used, manipulation, neuroplasticity, all of these concepts that maybe people haven't thought about before. You've also spoken about how the Weather Underground, the Black Liberation Army, the Black Panthers, they've all basically been resurrected in a sort of prepared for mainstream, kinder, gentler, more marketable presentation under this phrase that obviously no one can argue with. Black lives do matter, but yet the organization itself is not exactly what it appears to be.
But when you and I say Black Lives Matter, now to the Black psychic, that term matter means significance. But according to the psychic of the deep state, it does not mean significance. The term matter in the mind of the deep state simply means that matter is nothing more than a piece of property. It is a human particle. So then, according to the mindset of the deep state, when they term Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that every life matters of any significance. And this is in the mindset of the deep state. What they're saying, that Black Lives Matter, they are a piece of property or matter, which is nothing more than a human particle. Jason, this is deep today, and I'm really looking forward to unpacking both Antifa, but more specifically, Black Lives Matter. Looked like we lost your sound there, Jason.
Yes, Bishop, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
I have lost sound for a second. I'm going to work to restore it here. But Bishop, no one can really take us through this in the same way that you can. So we're going to be unpacking all the information you've prepared for us while I overcome this problem. It's amazing, Bishop. There's so many different things that I'm doing to try to prevent these problems from happening. But I do like to remind our viewers that they can also hear you on the radio at liferadionj.com and on 92.9 FM. And Bishop, it's so important for viewers of Crowdsource the Truth to support your global spiritual revolution by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and making a contribution so you can continue bringing this information forward. I'm going to restore the sound while you continue sharing this information with us.
Absolutely. The Paradigm of Manipulation, the Paralysis of Emotion, Volume 3. And we're going to connect. There are over 1,000 left-wing terrorist liberal organizations in this country who are nothing more than shell corporations that had been uniquely designed and created by the Luciferian Baphomet left in order to subvert American power. So the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion, and we're going to go through just in case some of your listeners were not privy to last week's teaching. So we talked about the term PSYOP, right? Or PSYREP, which means psychological operations via through Operation Mockingbird. That goes back to the early part of the 1950s through the Central Intelligence Agency, where they would use the American media outlet in order to persuade, change, and to influence American perception. Now, as a side note for your listeners, the term media is also a transliteration to the word medium, or where we get the term witch, okay? Media, medium, witch. So then to understand what we are going through now as a nation, and more specifically through the PSYOP operation of the death of George Floyd, the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion, we have to look at the psychological operations. Now, I found out this morning in preparing for you, Jason, that there are approximately 1,000 psychological operations within the U.S. Army alone.
Wow.
I'm not talking about the Navy, the Air Force, or even the Marines. In the apparatus of the most powerful army on earth, the United States U.S. Army, there are at least 1,000 psychological operations, okay, that I'm going to reveal here today in relation to Black Lives Matter. So the Military Psychological Operations Manual, the one secret military manual used to manipulate public perceptions. All of this comes from the Third Reich. Okay, and we talked about Reinhard Gillen. I'm going to bring him up here in the next half hour to 45 minutes as we're breaking down this paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion. So we talked about not just neuroplasticity, that the human brain grows into the shape of what the individual is thinking at that moment. But you and I also discuss the second scientific term called neuroparasitology, where the diet of not just Black people, but many Americans is infecting not only the way that they think, but because of this bad diet that is producing parasites that are affecting the human brain and the human genome, which is now forcing the American mind to act in a way that which is not normal, the rioters. So this is neuroparasitology, which comes from the foundation of neuroplasticity, where the human brain becomes the very shape and form what the individual is thinking at that moment, and neuroparasitology. Through bad dieting, the psychological operations of not just against Black America, but against Americans, period, in controlling their personality through bad dieting. We talked about that most diseases are genetically predetermined. We talked about the term epigenetic effect, okay? The term epi means on top of, and the term genetic means gene. It means that most of the rioters not only come from broken homes, and you and I talked about this term, proximal abandonment, where the parent may be there physically, but emotionally they are absent. But the epigenetical effect of America simply means because of past historical pain and past historical trauma, the human gene has been compromised, Jason, because of trauma, because of pain. The deep state has become masters of manipulating and weaponizing that pain and that trauma via the rioters. This is the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion. And because of those genes being compromised, that gene becomes cancerous. Another topic for another day. We talked about quickly here Dr. James Gilligan, right? Or Gilligan. He was the former Harvard director for the Center for the Study of Violence. And Dr. Gilligan had once said that there was a study done in Dunedin, New Zealand, that over 1,000 people from birth into their late 20s, at the age of 29, had developed abnormal genes through gene mutation. And later on in the broadcast, I'm going to reveal one of the psychological operations motto, which is the U.S. Psychological Operation 12, that reveals in Latin code that term mutation. Because of genetic mutation, it means that the human
Bishop?
trauma, okay? The human gene has become compromised because of pain, the rioters. And so let me go through this quickly before we get to Black Lives Matter and Act Blue. So then, according to Professor James Gilligan, that these 1,000 people in Dunedin, New Zealand, 95% of these individuals had genetic mutations, which some had a connection to a predisposition to commit violence through reaction, the rioters, but only if that individual was also subjugated to severe child abuse. Okay, so in order to understand Black Lives Matter in their psyche, we have to look at the psychology of Black America, operating not from the strength of intelligence, but operating from the emotions of trauma. Okay. Now, when we talk, we will also discuss that according to a study done concerning the Dutch Hunger Winter in 1944. And we talked about that, where the Third Reich, and the term Reich means realm, but the term Reich in Latin also means psyop. So when we talk about the Third Reich, we're talking about the third realm or the third psyop. So they forced the Dutch people in Holland to go through 3 months where the women were in their second and third trimester carrying their children. They almost starved to death. Now those children they produce, okay, 75 years later, are suffering emotionally and physically with high blood pressure, high cholesterol, in obesity, and having all types of metabolic syndromes. So when we talked about also in last week, my friend, that environment does not begin at birth. Environment begins at conception. Because if a mother is traumatized, I'm talking to Black America, if a mother is through systemic racism, I'm not teaching victimhood, through oppression, depression, oppression, regression, then that child receives that environmental psyop, okay? This is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. That's
Bishop,
why
I'd like to share something with you that I think is okay. So here's an article from the New York Times that I suspect you've read based on what you're telling us, because it's about exactly what you're talking about. But look at this section of the newspaper it seems to be in. Matter.
And that is amazing. Again, Jason, and not to beat a educational dead horse, you are the best. We've been talking about Gestalt theory. The term Gestalt is a Germanic term by manipulating thought that goes back to pre-Nazi Germany in the cop Derek Chauvin was black. You will not have the reaction Chauvin. They don't look at him as a human being. They're looking at him through the Gestalt psyop. He's the enemy because he's white, not knowing the circumstances as to why George Floyd was taken out. If it's black on black crime, there is no Reverend Al Sharpton, there's no Jesse Jackson, there's no Farrakhan, okay? Where you had 30,000 black men, women, and babies have been slaughtered in South Central since 1980. No outcry, no marching, okay? But since it was a white guy, then you have a Gestalt reactionary psyop, as we're talking about the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Quickly, we talked about Dr. Kurt Lewin, right? One of the founding fathers of the Gestalt theory. Now, Dr. Kurt Lewin, quickly in 1930, traveled to the United States and was hired by Stanford University. And he spent 6 months at Stanford, where he established the Parapsychology Research Institute that today Dr. Bruce McCandless, and you and I have been talking about him in connection to both Vic Kidd and Kobe Bryant. Dr. Bruce McCandless is the director of Stanford University's Parapsychology Research Institute, where they also specialize in MK Ultra, mind control, behavioral modification. Dr. Christine Blasey Ford sits on that board, including Jeffrey Morgan Steibel. Okay, so Dr. Kurt Lewin, along with his educational proteges of Dr. Max Wertheimer, Dr. Wolfgang Kohler, and Dr. Leon Festinger. Now, Dr. Festinger is the father of cognitive dissonance, going back to 1957. That is a scientific term, cognitive dissonance, that through cognitional thinking, the individual holds two or more contradictory beliefs. So, in one side of the rioter, they want peace. But on the other paradoxical side of the rioters, they want destruction. That is called cognitive dissonance, that's rooted in pain and trauma through violence, through sexuality, through the prism of victimhood. Okay? Now, there's a lot of clinical psychologists and neuroscientists that I have been teaching for the past 100 years, that because of the 430 years of global enslavement of Black people of African centric descent, their cells have been genetically programmed, okay, to commit reaction. So then, through 430 years of global enslavement, the Black psychology of Black men and women in this country and around the world, throughout the Black diaspora, that they have been genetically programmed, not all, but most, act and to commit violence. Minneapolis, Minnesota, Baltimore, Maryland, Sanford, Florida, okay, Valdosta, Georgia. Again, this is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. And quickly here, before we get into Black Lives Matter, you and I have talked about not just the epigenetic effect, where the gene of the individual has been compromised because of pain and trauma, and proximal abandonment, where many of these rioters, not all, but many of them, are suffering from proximal abandonment, where the parent was either there but not emotionally available, or the home that these children grew up in did not have a father. Newsflash, racism is not the main problem concerning America. The main problem is the lack of fathers in homes, Black homes, white homes, brown homes. That's the problem, Jason, because when you have that father can direct that child how to navigate around systemic racism, okay? Now, we talked about implicit memory effect, where because of trauma, there is what we call total recall. So when Black people look at Derek Chauvin, they're looking at him as the enemy because he's white, not because he's a criminal, regardless of his race, creed, color, or ethnicity. This is called implicit memory effect, as we're talking about this paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Well, as we go forward here, and we talked about the Russian poet, right? Dr. Alexander Pushkin, who is the father of modern day Russia. He had said that a deception that elevates us is dearer than a host of low truths. You and I have been talking about what the great David Icke has taught us, problem, reaction, solution, where the deep state creates a manufactured crisis to solicit an emotional reaction from Black people, so that Black people are going to look to the deep state and not to God for a solution, which the deep state already had the solution before they created the crisis. That's problem, reaction, solution. So when we talk about paradigm, a pattern, a set replication, you and I talked about the term paralysis, the loss of the ability, okay, to move, to think, to reason, to understand. The inability to decipher between a racist cop or a cop who has taken out someone because of a drug deal or because of a deeper conspiracy. And I agree with you 100%. Some weeks ago, you were powerfully a part of the marches in Brooklyn. And most of these people had no idea. They have no idea as to why they are marching. They're thinking that George Floyd was taken out because of racism. That's not the case. So that is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. That's indirect deception, or what we call tactical deception, okay, built upon the paralysis of emotion, where deep state devils are weaponizing our pain and our trauma against each other. This is from the psyop of Dr. Kurt Lewin, okay, a Nazi doctor, okay, going back in the 1930s. He was a clinical psychologist. And quickly, before we get into Black Lives Matter, Dr. Kurt Lewin is the father of social, organizational, and applied psychology, or better known as social distancing. That's emotional dysregulation of the disorder of a person's thinking. That is a part of the global house arrest, perpetuating the psyop of Dr. Kurt Lewin, Gestalt theory, social, organizational, and applied psychology, social distancing. And also, we talked about the inability of the individual to regulate his or her emotional responses to provocative stimuli. George Floyd. That's problem, reaction, solution. So as we talk about Emotional instability disorder, Jason, emotional impulse regulation disorder, emotional unstable personality disorder, which gives rise to hyperactivity disorder. We come to Antifa, right? Antifa is the algorithm of the cognitional thinking of the deep state. Now, the term Antifa comes from the origin of the Third Reich. Now, for your listeners, the term Third Reich or the term Reich means that they are the third realm of psyop. So Reich in German means realm, and Reich in Latin means psyop. So we talk about the first psyop of the first realm, the Roman Holy Empire, right? Then we talk about the Second Reich or the second realm, right? The German Empire, okay, which gave birth after World War II, the Third Reich, or the third psyop, the Nazi SS. And as a quick side note, when you look at the insignia of the SS, it is a double bolted thunderbolt insignia. Look on the forehead of the Harry Potter series. Interesting. Look on the insignia of the U.S. Psychological Operations, okay? It has a double bolt with the head of the horse, the chess piece, because the entire psychological operations of the U.S. government, it comes from the foundation of the Third Reich. As we're
Sorry,
talking
Bishop,
about, go
where
right
does
ahead.
Harry Potter have this?
Look
Harry
in this
Potter
photo.
has a,
Yes,
huh.
oh, there you go. Exactly. Now you notice there. Now somebody may say, "Well, Bishop, that's a stretch, and there's no connection." When it comes to Hollywood and the connection to the occult, where the Third Reich through Adolf Hitler, okay, and the Waffen SS, they were practitioners within the psyop of occultism, okay? So that bolt, that single or double bolt, represents the insignia of the Waffen SS, okay? That has become the character of Antifa. Go right ahead, Jason.
Well, I wanted to bring up that J.K. Rowling's has recently been in like a Twitter fight with Harry Potter, whatever that kid's name is, about something she
Really?
said. I don't even know what she said, but they now, I mean, it's in the news. It's not even a question. They're telling us where J.K. Rowling's transphobia comes from. You can't
And you
disagree
notice
with anything without
that's
being
amazing.
vilified.
And you know why? Because J.K. Rowling is a Luciferian puppet. Now, remember some months ago, we brought up that the term solve ET coagula was on the arm of J.K. Rowling, right? It was tattooed. Solve ET coagulation means to dissolve in order to repopulate space. That's COVID-19. To dissolve through HR 6666, contact tracing, to dissolve through Microsoft's cryptocurrency of 060606 or MCR5. These devils want to depopulate you and I in order to repopulate our geographical locations with the blood of the elite. This is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. And as a quick side note, that Gestalt psychology, okay, again, is a theory of mind and brain manipulation, or where the mind and the thinking is shaped by the perception of one's past. We also we get into the other branches of Gestalt theoretical psychotherapy or Gestalt therapy, even Gestalt psychology in the music industry, in the R&B or hip hop, okay? Or the term hip hop goes back thousands of years, long before there was an R&B music foundation in this country, going back to West African witchcraft. To this day, where many witches and warlocks, okay, and witch doctors were hip hop from their hip in order to invoke spirits. Now, people are going to say, well, what does that got to do with R&B? Because through Gestalt psychology, the deep state has manipulated the perception of Black America through the Hollywood music industrial complex, okay? Because it's based on enslavement. Go right ahead, Jason.
I was going to say, Bishop, I thought that Africa Bambaataa invented hip hop. He was like a DJ and a producer and stuff. And so I just brought up a picture of him, and look at the hat that he's wearing.
Well, he got that information because he has a thorough knowledge of West African witchcraft and divination, okay? He didn't create the term hip hop. He incorporated that term into Black American psychic because of his knowledge of West African witchcraft and divination concerning witch doctors. They would dance from their hip hop, which invokes spirits of the underworld. This gets back to Gestalt theory through the paradigm of music. So they use our diet, neuroparasitology to control us. They use music, the Gestalt psychology through R&B and through what we call rap, okay? So music is the language of both pain and trauma. But that individual did not create the concept of what we call hip hop. He got it from the history of West African divination. That's where we get the term hip hop. So this is a part of the manipulation, Jason, and the paralysis of emotion. So
well, he's also behaving like a social engineer in that he's changed his name. He was born as Lance Taylor and then previously falsely assumed to be Kevin Donovan. Like, what is he, Bigfoot? I mean, how do we falsely, it's easy to know the guy's name.
Well, just like Don Warden, okay, Barack Obama's mentor for 29 years, changes his name to Dr. Khalid al-Mansour. So Dr. Mansour created the original Black Panther Party. It was not Huey Newton or Eldridge Cleaver.
Wow.
It was Don Warden with Saudi Arabian money, Chinese money through Mao Zedong, including H.L. Hunt out of Texas, created the creation of the original Black Panther Party. Okay. Whoa. And I know people are going to write you and saying the bishop is lying. No, this is the paradigm of manipulation. Go right ahead, Jason.
Well, because the other thing that you remind me of now, Bishop, you mentioned contact tracing before. There was a story just a little while ago in True Pundit about Bill Gates having negotiated a $100 billion contact tracing deal with Democratic Congressman Bobby Rush 6 months before the coronavirus pandemic. Now, this is this HR 6666, and it's the contact testing, reaching, and contacting everyone. This TRACE Act introduced by Bobby Rush, who was the founder of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panthers, which was most closely associated with the Weather Underground and lots of trouble.
And Bobby Rush was close to not just Huey Newton and Eldridge Cleaver, but Bobby Rush, okay, I'm going to say something that Black people are not going to agree with. But according to a lot of African pastors I know in Chicago who were former Black Panthers, you know, they're in their 60s and 70s now, they're colleagues of mine in the gospel, they said that Bobby Rush had set up Fred Hampton to be taken out because Bobby Rush was an FBI agent provocateur okay, spying on Fred Hampton, okay, and the Chicago chapter of the Black Panther Party. Now, according to a lot of Black people, Bobby Rush is a sellout. The police, the racist police in Chicago in the 1960s, took out Fred Hampton because the police in the local FBI received intel from Bobby Rush. Bobby Rush was a traitor. And I don't know, a lot of people, Black people may disagree. I don't care. My assignment is to expose, regardless of your race, creed, color, or ethnicity. Bobby Rush, who's got a face like a dog, is a traitor to Black America, okay? And he's being used as a boule, as a 33rd degree Prince Hall Mason, okay, to protect the system.
Whoa. So wait a minute, Bishop. I didn't know
Tracy.
anything about this Fred Hampton murder, but he's murdered by the police. And this is starting to sound remarkably like George Floyd.
Yeah, same thing like George Floyd. Excellent connection, Jason. Okay, again, you're saying something that I never even thought of. That Fred Hampton, that George Floyd is a present day Fred Hampton. My question is, who set up George Floyd?
Right.
Who set him up? So Bobby Rush set up Fred Hampton. Who set up George Floyd? Okay. Whoa. So when you're talking about that psychological operation, now remember, we talked about Antifa, the German AB action. Now the term action, quickly, capital A-K-T-I-O-N, is a Germanic term meaning action, okay? So the original Antifa, man, I'm excited today, was created by General Reinhard Gehlen, who went on to create the Gehlen Organization after World War II, where Gehlen helped the CIA and helped the KGB and helped French intelligence and Canadian intelligence. So Reinhard Gehlen, a devil who should have been hanged because of him helping murdering 6 million of our precious Jewish brothers and sisters. But Reinhard Gehlen was a demonic genius as well. He created the original Action or Antifa because they were anti-Soviet fascists, right? So the cognition, the psyop, Jason, of today's Antifa came from the Third Reich. Now, remember last week you brought up, and I had led you to that first U.S. psychological operations insignia, right, of that Greek letter psi, capital PSI, which means psychology. Now, a lot of you who are in the boule, out of the 9 Black Greek letter secret societies, a few of them have the term psi, capital PSI. Why? Because the boule is a psychological piece of matter that the deep state is controlling. Now, remember, again, now you're looking at that double bolt. That is from the Third Reich, okay? Because the Third Reich realm of psyop helped build America into a superpower. I am sorry to say this, because those Nazis should have been gassed or hung, Jason. But the United States was entering into a Cold War against the Soviet Union. So Antifa, quickly, before we get to Black Lives Matter, was the Antifa today is built from the creation of the Nazi spy master, Reinhard Gehlen, okay? They are anti-Soviet fascists. But at the same time, the flag of Antifa today, the flag of red and black, or black and red, was created by a Soviet communist killer a man by the name of Mikhailovich Molotov. Mikhailovich Molotov created the Molotov cocktail. He's the one that created the flag that you see now, which goes back to the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution. So let me get this straight. So the PSYOP of Antifa is a Third Reich operation, third realm of PSYOP operation from Adolf Hitler, Hermann Goering, okay, and the rest of these devils during the time of World War II, which means anti-fascist. They were anti-socialist, communist, fascist. But at the same time, the insignia flag of today's Antifa goes back to the creation from Mikhailovich Molotov, who went on to become a close political associate of Comrade Joseph Stalin. So Molotov, who created the Molotov cocktail, created the insignia of the communist socialist state of 1917 by overthrowing the Romanovs and the Tsar. So Antifa has a twofold psyop. They are both Nazis and they are both pro-Soviet communists. That's their foundation. Jason, they are the communists, they are the fascists, and they are the racists. They are. Looks like you was getting ready to say something, Jason.
Well, you're touching on topics that are really interesting to a particular co-host that I used to have, who last week showed up in our comments, very interestingly. So I'm just paying attention to this on so many different levels, Bishop. It's amazing. And of course, we had those lawyers, Black Lives Matter supporters, who were arrested in New York for throwing Molotov cocktails, who apparently aren't going to be charged with anything. I mean, that's essentially throwing a firebomb. And you're allowed to do that, I guess.
Because Antifa and Black Lives Matter, they are terrorist organizations who are nothing more than shell companies. And I'm going to come up to the Blue Act Foundation, the Blue Act Charities, and the Blue Act Civic Fund that's connected to the GoFundMe Fund, which the family of George Floyd is raking in millions of dollars. Now, listen, I'm not castigating the family of George Floyd, but the founders of the GoFundMe Fund sit on the executive board of Act Blue Foundation,
Really?
the Act Blue Charities, and Jason, the Act Blue Civic Fund that works in conjunction with GoFundMe. Now,
Who are those people, Bishop? Because they kicked Candace Owens off for trying to raise money for some restaurant that got burnt down, but they're raising money for all these other things.
They're raising money for all of these other things because we never look into these layers. And this is the paradigm, these layers, what I call the compartmentalization of darkness. It comes in layers. We cannot eat the whole elephant. We have to strip it down one layer at a time in order to get to its root. Now, as a quick side note, I'm getting a lot of emails coming in from people saying that they had no idea that this Mikhailovich Molotov was the creator of the Molotov cocktail, which Antifa and Black Lives Matter are utilizing. So Molotov was the creator of the original Antifa flag, going back to Lenin, Stalin, and Trotsky during the October 1917 Russian Revolution. So Antifa is a combination of both the Third Reich present-day Nazi regime and Soviet fascism, all right, predating the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991. Again, this is some powerful information as we're talking about the paradigm of manipulation in the paralysis of emotion. And quickly, this Reinhard Gillen established spy networks. You and I talked about that. Through the Weimar Republic, we're talking about the Central Intelligence Agency, which absorbed the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS. But at the same time, Reinhard Gillen was playing both sides, both CIA and the KGB. Reinhard Gillen, through the PSYOP called Action, capital Aktion, which is the flag of Antifa, is the continuation of Nazi intelligence.
Bishop, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
but something's just hitting me here. I had this thing up from what we were talking about before about the German Empire and the coat of arms of the German Empire from 1889 to 1918. It looks a
Yes.
lot like this double-headed eagle, but with only
George
one
Floyd.
head, that's tattooed on the chest of George Floyd.
And the question is, again, who was George Floyd?
Right.
Now, I see this is the thing here. Now, according to my contact in the Minneapolis Police Department, now I have a relative who is a cop, but I have not talked to him in years. So I'm not talking about him. This is another cop who is a pastor colleague of mine in the gospel who pastors a Pentecostal church, which I'm not going to name. He said that the coffin of George Floyd was only 6'1". But George
Right.
Floyd was over 6'6", 6'6.5". What's going on? And so this tattoo of the German Empire.
6'6.5" is 6'6". Half a foot
Oh
is
my
6
God.
inches.
Look at that. I never even. Listen, nothing is by accident or random when it comes to the global Luciferian Baphomet deep state on tattooed on the chest of the late George Floyd. Who was he connected to? Now, we talked about his friend Stephen Jackson, right? And Stephen Jackson's father, George Aldrich, the late Mr. George Aldrich, was a 33rd degree Black Prince Hall Mason who gave his Masonic garbs or garments to Stephen Jackson. Stephen Jackson is a Black Prince Hall Mason. His mother's name is Juliet Jackson. Now, a lot of people are saying, and I don't go by rumors, Jason, I go by facts, not innuendos, that the mother, the late mother of the late George Floyd, her name was Judy Jackson. That cannot be substantiated. But something is missing about this case. Now, before we get to George Floyd, this Antifa, okay, now, as a side note, Reinhard Gillen, and through Nazi intelligence, after the advent of World War II, through Operation Paperclip, helped the Central Intelligence Agency to develop PSYOP military psychological operations manuals, more specifically called QBARK. We talked about that last week, capital KUBARK, which is a CIA counterintelligence manual that teaches the agent how to interrogate a subject. That came from Nazi intelligence through Reinhard Gillen, who is the father of the present day Antifa, okay? Because George Soros, his real name is George Schwartz. And you said on last week, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, he bragged about on 60 Minutes, okay, about giving up his own people to the Nazis. George Soros is an enemy combatant. Bill Gates.
So people like to email me stuff, subtly anti-Jewish stuff, and the more clever among them try to make it like Robert Galen working with the Canadian and the American and the British intelligence. I mean, this guy is all about this British double-cross system that David Hawkins always talks about, where they present you with something just like Black Lives Matters that you think is one thing, but it's actually another. So if you were a Nazi maniac and you wanted to create some nefarious force, you could fill it up with Jewish people and then tell everybody, oh, look at what these Jews are doing. And also, if
Yes.
you were a Nazi, you'd have access to a ton of Jewish people who were being tortured, and you could go to every single one of them and say, how would you like to be relieved of this torture, become a criminal and work for this thing? If you ask enough, you'll find, like George Soros, somebody who's willing to do it.
And see, and again, this is through the side of anti-Semitism. Okay, get a few Jews, get them to be a part of the SS or the original Antifa to make it look like it was the Jewish people who created Antifa. And during my studies this past week, the Jewish people had nothing to do with the creation of Antifa. Okay, you got a lot of skinheads and white supremacists who are trying to deflect attention from them onto the Jewish people, okay? And so this is a part, again, of the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Excellent point that you just made there, Jason. And so even the concept of COINTELPRO, right? That came from Nazi intelligence or intelligentsia through Reinhard Gillen, okay, where they would infiltrate Soviet pro-communist organizations in and throughout Germany prior and during the advent of World War II. Now, we talked about Black Lives Matter, okay? It was born after the 2013 Trayvon Martin case, which specifically took place the year before in 2012, okay, by three Marxist women, Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, and Opo Temeti. She's of Nigerian descent, and all three are a part of the Boule Secret Society. All three of these women are Jezebel witches. There is no fear in me, Jason. These women hate Black men. They actually hate themselves, and they're being used because of their pain and trauma that they never dealt with, okay? Because they never knew their father or they never had a stable home. Now, their pain and their trauma is being manipulated by a new slave master, George Soros, okay? So all three of these women, and let me say this, I'm going to prophesy here. Listen, Black Lives Matter will be destroyed. Let me say it again. Black Lives Matter will be destroyed. President Trump is not going to allow Antifa and Black Lives Matter to destroy property through destruction and mayhem. It's not going to happen. I'm telling you, Jason, within the next year to year and a half, these organizations, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, will be destroyed, just like the original Black Panther Party. Okay, as we're talking about the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. You and I talked about these organizations layered around Black Lives Matter, right? The Black Youth Project 100. And if you trace every satellite office that the Black Youth Project is located, there is a high percentage that I'm going to bring up next week where you have a high percentile of young Black men and women who end up murdered and having their organs extracted. Why? Because Black people contain an element called melanin. That's another topic for another day, because melanin is sold not just on the Black market here in the United States, but around the world. But melanin is sold on many global stock markets. So not just the Black Youth Project 100, okay? Also the Center for Popular Democracy and the Black Civic Engagement Fund. We talked about some of these psyops that are layered around Black Lives Matter, the change of color, and the Advancement Project, okay? All of these organizations are layered around Black Lives Matter. They're nothing more than shell companies and charities of the deep state to control Black people by manipulating their pain in their trauma that they never spiritually dealt with, Jason. Again, when we're connecting Black Lives Matter to Antifa, Antifa is the military arm of Black Lives Matter.
Ooh.
Black Lives Matter is the propaganda arm of Antifa. Go right here, Jason.
Advancement Project was created by Condoleezza Rice and her sister or mother.
Wow. That I did. Wow. Jason, again, now I gotta, you're forcing me to do a study in Condi Rice. Is she a boule? I'm going to find
Gotta
that out.
be, right?
She's got to be a boule. Why
And her
is she
sister went
connected?
to Harvard and NYU Law. NYU Law
Yes,
was where I confronted Andrew McCabe, and they love Andrew Weissman and all the guys that were on the Mueller committee.
exactly. Why is Condoleezza Rice connected through her project to Black Lives Matter? Again, these are layers that are being exposed each and every day as we're talking about this manipulation and the science of emotionalism. It gets deeper now, Jason.
Well,
The
and
four
Bishop, do you
foundations.
remember? Sorry, one more thing on Condoleezza Rice. She went and met with Muammar Gaddafi before the 2011 invasion of Libya that has now resulted in what was formerly the most prosperous African nation, now is a hotbed of warlords, killing, and a modern day slave trade.
Again, Condoleezza Rice, her hand, along with Hillary Clinton, we went, we saw, we conquered. Condoleezza Rice, I believe, is a boule, okay? And because of her connection through her project to Black Lives Matter, and why did she see Muammar Gaddafi right before the Western powers took him out? She is complicit in the murder of Muammar Gaddafi. Now, I'm not defending Muammar Gaddafi, but when I'm saying, and you and I talked about this gold dinar some weeks ago, right? And that one of the reasons why he was taken, an excellent point that you brought up about Condoleezza Rice, who had a relationship with George W. Bush, another topic for another day. So
But
then
also
when
remember, Bishop, I'm sorry to keep interrupting, but she was in the whatever room with Dick Cheney. Remember, idiot W. Bush was on the plane reading books about goats, and Dick Cheney was in the war room here with Condoleezza Rice running 9/11.
Now, remember, why is he reading a book about goats? Why? Because
Baphomet.
now you and I talked about goat riding, remember? Like a month or two ago concerning
Yeah.
the Masonic orders, goat riding. We talked about that. Now, it's not by accident that George Bush was reading a book on goats. And we talked about some months ago the Masonic order in dealing with goat riding, okay? It gets into bestiality. That's another topic for another day. But back to there you go, Black Lives Matter, okay? Again, you have all of these layers, and jump in anytime, Jason. You have all of these layers around Black Lives Matter. You and I talked about the Borealis philanthropy group, right? And according to Greek mythology, it means twin city, right? Talking about Minneapolis, right? We're talking about Blair Hall. Now, again, Alicia Garza, and I'm getting some email questions from a lot of our listeners, right, who are listening to us on YouTube. Connect Alicia Garza and the other two women to the Boule Seeker Society. So Alicia Garza is a member of Omega Phi Beta. That is under the umbrella of the Boule Seeker Society, Sigma Pi Phi, okay, which is under the umbrella of the National Pan-Hellenic Divine Nine. So Alicia Garza is a Boule, okay? Patrice Cullors, capital Cullors, is a part of Omega Phi Beta, okay? Just like Alicia Garza. So Patrice Cullors is a Boule Seeker Society member. And Opa Tameti, okay, of Nigerian descent. She is a member of both Theta Nu Xi. Now, you brought up last week that term Xi, capital XI, that's more of a Chinese
Well, I was wrong, though. Somebody
Yeah,
emailed me and said that that is actually Greek letters.
it is a Greek letter. And so we stand corrected.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Absolutely. So that is Nuji. But more importantly, Miss Timeti is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. In other words, she is a boule. So all three of these founders of Black Lives Matter are all radical Black communist, socialist, Marxist, Leninist Jezebels. I call it like it is, Jason. They are being used by the deep state in order to bring destruction to the Constitution and to our government here. Okay, so again, quickly here, Antifa is the military arm of Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is the propaganda arm of Antifa. Okay, now we talked about, remember the $1 million worth of counterfeit money that was confiscated at the port of Minneapolis, right? Back in December 2019. Now, for some reason, we didn't hear about this until what? January 27th. You brought up that date. That is the day right after the death of Kobe Bryant. Now, I've been getting some information this week, and I'm going to say it, but it cannot be substantiated, that the $20 counterfeit bill that George Floyd had matches some of the serial numbers that was confiscated in that $1 million counterfeit money confiscation. Now, again, Jason, I'm not saying that George Floyd had anything to do with counterfeit money, but he was involved in drug trafficking and drug distribution, including Derek Chauvin, okay, and the Minneapolis Police Department. Now, as a side note, it's getting deeper now. The city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, they have what they call the Minneapolis 2040 Cities Comprehensive Plan, called Minneapolis 2040, that by the year 2040, they want to revitalize, okay, through gentrification. So revitalization is another term for gentrification, okay, but they're using the riots in order to begin the process of Minneapolis 2040. Go right ahead, Jason.
I'm just amazed by this, Bishop.
Yes. And that's what it is. So then, again, I'm saying to all Americans, black and white, please sit down and remove emotion out of the equation, because you got the mayor, Jacob Frey. Now, Jacob Frey, okay, is very close to the Minneapolis Police Department. There's nothing wrong with that. But what I'm saying is that the Minneapolis 2040 project, where they want to tear down homes and property in mainly Black urban and Latino locations in Minneapolis, in order to revitalize through gentrification, just like LA riots, okay, in Baltimore. They want to do the same thing by 2040. Well, who's helping them? The rioters. They don't need earth moving equipment. They got the psyop of the rioters, Jason, and now they're going to establish gentrification. They're going to raise up property value by forcing Black folk and Latino families out of those locations where they are being destroyed because of the rioters. Go right ahead, Jason. You're getting ready to say something.
Yeah, because that's what I understood gentrification to mean, was moving lower income people out. But this picture that came up when I was looking at Minneapolis 2040, Bishop, look at the t-shirt that this guy is wearing. It looks like, look at the eyes of the person who's on there. It says death grips, and it's got this Chinese writing. I don't know if you are a Simpsons viewer, but it reminds me of this weird episode of The Simpsons where there's some Japanese TV ad with Homer Simpson and this weird writing. But why is this guy wearing a shirt that says death grips and have somebody on there with crazy eyes and Chinese writing?
and it has a Chinese psyop background. And you hit another nerve with me, Jason, concerning the word China or Chinese. Now, remember that $1 million worth of counterfeit money
Came
that
from China.
came from
Yeah.
China.
Yeah.
Why would the Chinese send counterfeit money to Minneapolis?
I don't know.
Because the entire apparatus of the Minneapolis Police Department are complicit not just in drug trafficking and distribution. Not every cop, but a great percentage of cops are involved, including they're involved in the system of counterfeit money. Again, Jason, you are hitting some powerful points as we're talking about the paradigm of manipulation and the psyop of what I call emotionalism. Okay. And again, we talked about Antifa being originated from the Third Reich and the flag of Antifa going back to Mikhailovich Molotov. Who was the creator of the Molotov cocktail, which Antifa and Black Lives Matter uses. So Antifa comes from the foundation of Reinhard Gehlen, and their insignia, the flag, comes from the Bolshevik Revolution. So as we move forward here, now we're getting into, now you had talked about that flag or the insignia of the German Empire. Again, the First Reich, okay, which means the First Reich of the first realm of psyop was the Roman Empire. The Second Reich was the German Empire, through which that double-headed eagle, right, 32 or the 33 Masonic order symbol that you had revealed a couple of minutes ago, so powerful. The Third Reich, of course, is the Nazi regime from 1933 to 1945 through the Waffen SS, all right, where Adolf Hitler, who has Rothschild blood on his grandmother's side, another topic for another day, Heinrich Himmler, who, now after the fall of the Third Reich, there were over 66,000 books on occultism that was found in the home, the Berlin home of Heinrich Himmler, and then Hermann Goering, and of course, Reinhard Gehlen, okay? That is the psyop of the Third Reich. The Fourth Reich, which is the realm of the present-day psyop, is both Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Yes, they are the Fourth Reich that brings on the realm of this new psyop, that they are being used, the military side, Antifa, and the propaganda side of Black Lives Matter. Why? Because these deep state Luciferian Baphomet puppeteers, George Soros, whose real name is Georgie Schwartz, okay, who controls the European Union in the European Common Market, George Soros, Barack Obama, okay, are controlling and manipulating perception of not just Black people, but many hundreds of thousands of Americans to bring about a Fifth Reich. Now, and check this out, Jason. So we're talking about the First Reich, the Roman Empire, the Second Reich, the German Empire, the Third Reich, the Nazi regime between 1933 and 1945. The Fourth Reich is Antifa and Black Lives Matter that will be destroyed. What is the goal? The goal is to bring a democratic socialist republic through the creation, Jason, of a communistic caliphate that will bring on that's the Fifth Reich. These devils, especially on the left, they want to sell our nation through the policy of HR 1111 to the United Nations because they want to destroy us, Jason. That's the Fifth Reich through the psyop of the Fourth Reich, Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So those are the fifth dimensional Reichs: Roman Empire, German Empire, the Nazi Party, okay, or Waffen SS, the Fourth Reich, Antifa, and Black Lives Matter that will give birth to the Fifth Reich, a communist caliphate state in America, where they want to establish a new form of government called the Democratic Socialist Republic. But Jason, it's not going to work. Now, as a side note here, according to the CIA World Fact Book, okay, the CIA World Fact Book, or just type in field listing political pressure groups and leaders per country. The CIA World Fact Book, or field listing political pressure groups and leaders per country. It says that there are 1,000, Jason, left-wing Democratic terrorist organizations like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. Those represent 1,000, Jason, shell companies that are controlled by George Soros, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, okay? Those, not just through the Democratic Party, but this left-wing deep state Luciferian psyop. These 1,000 left-wing Democratic organizations are nothing more than 1,000 shell companies that are layered around the Open Society Foundation via George Soros. But also, according to the CIA World Fact Book, field listing and political pressure groups and leaders per country, that from these 1,000 left-wing groups here in the United States, they have branched off into almost, not quite, almost every nation upon the face of the earth. So it is this global serpent, Jason, that must be destroyed. Now, here comes Act Blue. Oh my God. Now, what is Act Blue? Now, there are 3 divisions of Act Blue, and I believe that we've been hearing like people like Candace Owens expose them. But allow me to take it a little deeper. So to understand the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Now, before I get into that, there's a question that's coming into my email inbox, and they're asking me to explain from last week. Remember that first psychological operations logo that underneath the head of the horse, Jason, and underneath the sword is that twisted tassel, right? White, black, white, black, white, black, or white, red, white, red, white, red, which represents the foundational tassel of the Central Intelligence Agency's logo, okay? Now, some CIA logos have white, black, or white, red, white, red, white, red, and some have black, then double white. It depends where the CIA has adapted themselves around the world. Now, the U.S. Army has at least 1,000 psychological operations. I'm not even talking about the Air Force and the Marines, okay? I'm not even talking about the Navy. I'm talking about the U.S. Army. So there are at least 1,000 psychological operations around the world. But the colors on the tassels of both the CIA and the U.S. psychological industrial complex, those colors change, Jason, according to the adaptability of their mission. And now a lot of questions are coming in. They're saying, Bishop, if that is the case, why don't we see on the floor of the CIA lobby the same white, black, or white, red tassel insignia? Well, on the floor, the lobby of the CIA, the original construction, okay, the original construction of the lobby was built with 64 chess piece structures, black and white. 64. Now, I don't know how many there are today, but the original lobby of the Central Intelligence Agency that looks like a chessboard. So the reason why that you and I don't see that tassel in the form of red, white, or red, black, because that tassel has now been spread in the form of a 64 chess piece dimension on the lobby floor of the CIA. Well, how many sections does a chessboard have? 64. So when you and I walk into the lobby of the CIA, you and I, according to the psyop of these devils, you and I are nothing more than chess pieces. That's the reason why we don't see the tassel in the colors of red and white, or black and red, or white and black, because that tassel is now spread on the floor of the Central Intelligence Agency. So the lobby floor is one gigantic chessboard. And the human beings that walk into work or walk into meetings are nothing more than horsehead chess pieces. And again, Jason, this is powerful here. Now, jump in anytime. Now,
well, this is where we get the book, The Devil's Chessboard, about Alan Dulles, the CIA, and the rise of America's secret government.
Yes, The Devil's Chess. Again, Jason, Alan Dulles, I'm telling you, he was high up in occultism, okay? And he, along with President Truman, had designed the original seal of the Central Intelligence Agency with a 16-pointed star, okay? That 16, it represents 16 degrees upon the face of the earth. That the term central comes from the Greek word centrica. So when we say Central Intelligence Agency, we are saying the centrica of power through intelligence, not through an organization or a foundation. It's an agency whose money, whose budget is not known to the American public. So the colors of this seal change according, Jason, to the PSYOP global operation of the agency. Okay, again, this is the paradigm of manipulation through the PSYOP of what we call emotion, okay? And there are at least 1,000 psychological operations. Now, let's get to Act Blue.
Yeah.
Now, Act Blue was created in 2004 by Benjamin Rahn, capital R-A-H-N, and Matt D. Bergelis, okay? So Benjamin Rahn, being an attorney, graduated from Harvard, and Matt D. Bergelis, okay? They are also connected with the founders of GoFundMe, okay, to Brad and Damp House and
He also
Andrew
created Stripe,
Wallace.
Bishop.
What was that?
This guy also created Stripe, which is kind of like PayPal. It's a kind of an electronic credit card processing thing. Benjamin Rahn, product engineer there. Sorry.
Yes, nothing. That's a part of neuroplasticity and neuroparasitology. More so with neuroplasticity. They're forming.
Well, but wait a minute. I think it could be more than that, because what happens is Stripe. In other words, if everybody said, "Hey, Act Blue, we're not going to process credit cards for you," Stripe could do that. It's a credit card processor.
Exactly. And to your listeners, when they go on secure.actblue.com/directory, okay, or ActBlue directory, and it comes up, Jason, because there's a difference between Black Lives Matter, the organization, versus Black Lives Matter, the foundation.
Where do I find that? Act Blue what?
Act Blue. You go to secure.actblue.com/directory. Okay. So then, when you type in that space, within that empty search box of directory, there you go. And it's interesting that ActBlue has two other divisions. Okay. You have ActBlue, the ActBlue Foundation. Then you have the ActBlue Charities or the Charity Fund.
Mhm.
Then you have ActBlue Civics that they are connected to GoFundMe, okay, including PayPal. I'll come to that in the next few minutes because what patriots like Candace Owens, they go at a certain level, but they don't go deep enough. So ActBlue is a CIA foundation. It is a shell company that
Who is
doesn't
that?
have to report any money to the federal government.
Right.
Its founders, there you go, that 501c3, just like Benjamin Crump, the Institute. They don't have to report any of their money. Where is ActBlue getting their money? To fund the Barack Obama Foundation and Joe Biden, okay, and many other left-wing organizations and political candidates. So Benjamin Ron and Matt D. Burgelis also are connected to GoFundMe. I'm going to bring that out in the next 5 minutes. So the ActBlue Foundation is a left-wing shell company, okay? That is the conduit, Jason, for billions of dollars to go into super PACs, okay? Through Joe Biden and Barack Obama and Michelle Obama and all of these left-wing devils and all of these left-wing political organizations. So then Black Lives Matter is the political arm of Black Lives Matter, the foundation, which is a 501c3 entity that through the foundation, they don't have to report any money. So Black
Well,
Lives Matter.
just to correct you, Bishop, they do actually have to report it, but they just don't do it.
They just don't do it. And why don't they? And the question you have to ask, we have to ask ourselves, why don't they report that money? Because just like the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative, they're getting probably millions and billions of dollars from nations like China and Saudi Arabia. So ActBlue, now remember that term act comes from that German term Aktien or Antifa. So ActBlue, which was created by Benjamin Ron and Matt D. Burgelis, who worked on the 2008 and 12 Barack Obama presidential campaign. And they're also a part of the Clinton Global Initiative in the Clinton Foundation. Okay.
Wow.
So the ActBlue Foundation is a shell company. They don't keep millions and billions of dollars in any American bank. They keep their monies in the Bahamas, in the Cayman Islands, and over in the Swiss accounts. ActBlue is an illegal corporation. It's a shell organization supplying billions to Black Lives Matter and to the Black Lives Matter Foundation. Because Black Lives Matter, let me say this. I'm going to say this, and a lot of African Americans may disagree. When you say Black Lives Matter, in the mind of the Black psyche, they think the term matter means significance.
Yeah.
But in the psychic of the deep state, matter doesn't mean significance. It means that you are a property. What is matter? A property, a substance, and a human particle. Through inertia, Jason, the property of matter causes it to resist changes, get this, in thinking in direction. So when George Soros named it wasn't these three witches that named Black Lives Matter. Their slave master, okay, and you have to understand slavery was never abolished. Psychologically, slavery has only been redesigned. George Soros named the psyop of Black Lives Matter, not because Black Lives Matter, but because in the mind of these Luciferian devils who are using these witches, okay, matter represents property. Now, remember that term, affirmative action, we brought out a week or two
Yeah.
ago? Well, the original term was not called affirmative action, it was called affirmative property. So, Black Lives Matter is actually Black lives property. They are the property of the state. They are the substance and the particle of the state. They are the property of matter, which is forced to resist changes in their thinking and direction. Why? Because this represents affirmative property. They are a property according to the psyop of George Soros, their slave master. That is the definition of Black Lives Matter. I know Black people are going to say, wait a minute, I matter, Bishop. You do as far as significance. But you have to understand the psychological war operational unit of the global Baphomet system. So the term matter to them represents Black America. You're still property, chattel. You're still a substance, a particle. That you don't belong to God nor to yourself. You belong to the state of the deep state. That's Black Lives Matter. Now, Black Lives, the foundation, is a shell company that is connected to the Open Society Foundation, Jason. Okay. Now, remember last week you brought up, I believe, on that website, psyop.com, and that liquor bottle and all. Remember that the picture of the bird, right? And having his mouth there you go, in receiving droplets of medicine. And then we had directed your powerful listeners to go to Wikipedia and type in polio vaccine of a little girl's mouth open, a Black girl receiving droplets of vaccination that came from the Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates Foundation. Okay. Yeah. So then it's PSYOP. Everything, there you go. So this is psychological operations. When they looked at Derek Chauvin, they didn't look at him as just a criminal. They looked at him first as a white devil. This is what Black people have been conditioned to think, okay? This is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. A lot of people are writing into me right now stating, Bishop, you're blowing my mind concerning the property of matter. To the deep state, Black people are property. You are 3/5 of a human being that's still in the Constitution. This is the reason why I'm telling Black people to leave the plantation of the Democratic Party. So Act Blue Foundation, okay, through their directory, supplies millions of dollars to nonprofit organizations like Black Lives Matter Property through Black Lives Matter Property Foundation. Then, Jason, you have Act Blue Charities, okay? You can go to secure.actblue.com/AB Charities, okay? secure.actblue.com/AB Charities. So we established the foundation of Act Blue. Now we're going into the second PSYOP of Act Blue as a shell corporation called Act Blue Charities. Black Lives Matter is nothing more than a charity.
Whoa,
I know
$5 billion it's raised, Bishop.
Jason, where is this money coming from? And I'm Jason, I'm going to say this because of 9/11. Remember, the CIA was losing millions of dollars pre 9/11. And because of 9/11, okay, that was a created PSYOP operation. Now the CIA is worth billions of dollars. Now, because of George Floyd, billions of dollars are coming through Act Blue Foundation and Act Blue Charities and Act Blue civic organizations like GoFundMe, okay, and Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter Foundation. These are tentacles of shell corporations that are interconnected with each other, Jason. So, how do we destroy this? You don't listen. We think that we can destroy Black Lives Matter, and that will destroy George Soros. No, you have to cut the head off. You have to cut the top off that's providing the currency of money. This is where we get the term currency, of the flow of water. You cut off the tap. You arrest George Soros and Bill Gates and Barack Obama and the Pritzker family. You arrest these devils, then you cut off the currency source for Act Blue civic foundations, or Act Blue charities, including Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Foundation. These devils have to be arrested. Look at the billions of dollars. Are they reporting these monies to the federal government? No. This is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Here comes the third PSYOP of Act Blue, which is called Act Blue Civics. Now go to secure.actblue.com /donate/GoFundMe. Secure.actblue.com /donate/GoFundMe. So go down to contribution rules, part number 1. So Act Blue Civics is a registered charitable organization formed to democratize social welfare giving. Let me say this again. In other words, they want to create a social welfare state, Jason. They don't want Americans to be liberated financially. They want Americans, the left, to be dependent on the system of the plantation of the Democratic Party. So Act Blue Civics, which is an extension of the Act Blue Foundation and the Act Blue Charities Initiative. Act Blue Civics is a registered, and it's on their website, is a registered charitable organization formed to democratize social welfare giving. Really?
But here's the question, Bishop, because I mean, I saw that. I noticed that while you were telling us. And I went right to this ProPublica nonprofit charity explorer. And when we go over here to advanced search, if we put in exactly what I copied from there, any phrase in the election, go directly to find a nonprofit. Let's find it, because maybe I'm searching wrong. Find a nonprofit by all these words in its name. All right.
Yeah. And this is so important. And again,
Here
Jason, I think
Act Blue Civics.
Go right ahead. This is important here. Information to your powerful listeners. What Bishop is doing is unlayering, okay? And I am pulling back the layers that are surrounding and funding Black Lives Matter and Black Lives Matter Foundation. So to destroy this entity, the demons at the top have got to be stopped. George Soros, okay, the Pritzker Foundation, okay, the Mormon group that own the Sikorsky 76B helicopter, they have to be stopped. George Soros, the Pritzker family, Bill Gates. When you cut the tap off, then you stop the financial currency that flows down, Jason, to these tentacles, these organizations, and these initiatives that we call shell corporations. This thing is organized, it is demonically organized. And in order for us as patriots, as MAGA patriots, that our goal is to keep America great again, we have to pray that President Trump, through the FBI, will raid the offices of George Soros, will raid the offices of the Bill and Melinda Robin Williams Gates Foundation. These people have to be arrested because they are enemies combatants. And after the president will arrest them, then we must freeze their assets and give those assets to the American people. So Act Blue Civics, it's a registered charitable organization formed not to liberate Americans financially, but to democratize social welfare giving. And you can email this information to obtain more information at info@actblue.com or call 617-517-7600. It's showing right there. And they are registered in Florida. It shows their registration number in the state of Florida, in the state of Georgia. The Act Blue Civics Initiative, that's an extension of the Act Blue Foundation and the Act Blue Charities Initiative, which has given birth to the Act Blue Civic Fund. They're
paying their people a lot, Bishop. Look at this. You got the chief technical officer making $365,000 a year, general counsel 250. That's a lawyer. Director of outreach the head of product is making 272,000. Director of outreach 200,000. Seems like big salaries for people working for a charity, but I don't know that much about this stuff.
See, and because Act Blue is a conduit, it's a shell corporation that has given birth to a second shell corporation, Act Blue Charities, which has given birth to a third shell corporation, Act Blue Civics. These are layers when we're talking about the compartmentalization of darkness and exposing the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. In a few minutes, I'm almost done, Jason. This is powerful information.
And also, just one real quick addition, Bishop. It's interesting to note that Matt DeBergalis, Director, President, and Treasurer, is only from related organizations getting 24,000. Benjamin Ron, actual zero. Paid zero.
Jason, and you know what? That is a lie. There is no way that these two men, Benjamin Ron, okay, and this other character here, that is actually getting nothing. I do not believe that these two individuals, okay, who are attorneys, are getting nothing. But Jason,
aren't they engineers? Aren't they software engineers or something?
Mr. DeBergalis is a software engineer, and so is Mr. Ron, but Mr. Ron is also an attorney, okay?
Huh.
As a side note, the executive director, to my understanding, of Act Blue, the foundational division, is Aaron Hill, okay? Now, again, this is a major nerve in artery that is providing the lifeblood to the Democratic Party. To cut off these organizations, you have to cut off the tap at the top. Okay.
Now wait a minute, Bishop. This guy, we're dealing with Benjamin Rahn. He went to Harvard, got a BA in physics and mathematics, so his undergraduate degree is from Harvard, and then he went to Caltech. He's got a PhD, dissertation research, completed PhD candidacy, and received an MA NSF graduate fellow, research interest to theoretical methods of multi-scale physics, quantum information, biomolecular dynamics. When you were talking about matter before, Bishop, I was immediately thinking about matter and antimatter, and that's got to do with particle colliders and quantum physics, which this guy seems to know about.
Jason, you're blowing my mind again. I tell you, I might have to change my last name to Goodman before next week. You are, Jason, your mind is on such a different level from any other hosts that have ever been a guest on their show. I thank God because you're teaching me as well as we are concluding volume 3. So again, these physicists, understanding the concept of matter when it comes to Black Lives Matter. Now, matter in the science of Black America, that they have significance, which is true. Not just Black Lives Matter, every life matters as far as significance. But in the thinking, the psyop, the psychic of this global Luciferian deep state Baphomet system, you and I are not looked at with any significance. You and I are looked upon by these devils, George Soros, Bill Gates, Barack Obama, as nothing more than pawns, pieces of property called matter. We're nothing more than a matter within the American petri dish. This is in the mindset of the deep state. That's why they call it Black Lives Matter, or Black Lives, that is a property, a shell company that is supplying billions of dollars by and through the Act Blue Foundation, the Act Blue Charity Fund, and the Act Blue Civic Fund. And now the Civic Fund is connected to GoFundMe. Now, what I'm about to say, I'm not castigating, the family of George Floyd. They are raking in millions of dollars. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. But Jason, again, if the casket is only 6'1", but the man was 6'6.5", 6'6", something is wrong here, Jason. Something is not computing. Now, as we're talking about this paradigm, of manipulation through the paralysis of emotion. Now, as a side note, there was a major company that the rioters destroyed, was called the 7 Sigma Simulation Systems Company. Now, it's interesting that the 7 Sigma Simulation Company was owned by Chris Wyrobek, capital Wyrobek. Now, I've been getting information since last week's interview that Chris Wyrobek had a dummy that looked like George Floyd from the chest up. So why was 7 Sigma Simulation Systems destroyed? It was nowhere near 33rd or 38th Avenue or Street where George Floyd was murdered. Why was 7 Sigma Simulation Systems destroyed? Because the deep state is covering up something that they don't want you and I to know. Now, I've been getting a lot of videos of actual 2 gurneys. The first gurney having the upper torso of George Soros. The second gurney having the lower body.
Floyd.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, right there. There you go. And so, 7 Sigma Simulation System, where Chris Wyrobek is also a part of the advisory board of the Clinton Global Initiative. I'm not saying anything's wrong with that. I'm just saying there are connections.
Wait, that the 7 Sigma guy is on the board of the Clinton. Wait, say that again?
Yeah, Chris Wyrobek is on the board of the Clinton Global Initiative in the Clinton Foundation within their the IT section of the Clinton Foundation. Now, I'm not saying things wrong with that, Jason. I'm just saying that my job is always to connect the dots. I'm not castigating Mr. Wyrobeck and why his company, which was not even near the site where George Floyd was murdered, all of a sudden was destroyed. What
How
were
do I
they?
spell that guy's name?
Yes, Chris, capital Kris, Wyrobeck, capital Wyrobeck. Okay. Now he's suing the Minneapolis Police Department because he is saying that the Minneapolis Police Department did not properly protect his plant, his company. So it's interesting that some months before the death of George Floyd, he shows this dummy that looked like George Floyd. I'm not saying there's any connections, but for your listeners, my homework assignment that I'm going to give to them: dig into the life of Chris Wyrobeck and his connections to the Clinton Global Initiative in the Clinton Foundation and the 7 Sigma. Now, notice the term Sigma. We talk about Sigma Pi Phi. 7 Sigma simulation systems, okay, which produces what they call modular and high fidelity airway training courses for EMS units. Oh, okay. How to put your kneecap on the neck of a person? Is that it? Modular and high fidelity airway training courses for EMS workers. This goes back to 2017. Okay. At the GEMS conference, capital JEMS, where Chris Wyrobeck, the CEO of the 7 Sigma Simulation Systems in Minneapolis, would give courses how to save a person's life if they're choking or whatnot, or even how to put your hand on the parts of that person's neck. And again, I'm not castigating Mr. Wyrobeck in being complicit in the death of George Floyd. This is a part of what I call the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Now, remember last week, and I'm done, Jason, that the motto for the U.S. psychological operations is persuade, change, influence. Persuade, change in order to influence. Now, the term influence is where the term influenza is rooted in. What is influenza? It is a sickness. So you and I have become witnesses. We are witnessing a psychological operation through the deep state left, where they had targeted both George Floyd and Derek Chauvin. This has nothing to do with racism. This was a drug deal, and indirectly on the part of Derek Chauvin in connection to the Minneapolis Police Department. They are connected to both drug trafficking and distribution, not every cop, but most cops in Minneapolis, and they're connected to the confiscation of counterfeit money that came up out of China. Okay. Now remember that picture you showed of that looking type of T-shirt. So yeah. I just wanted to connect for your listeners concerning the manipulation through the psyop, Jason, of the paralysis of emotion. That there are approximately 1,000 psychological operations through the U.S. Army, and through every one of these psychological operations, Jason, they have 1,000 different logos or insignias that will match their mission into psychologically deceiving a particular country a hemisphere, a territory, or a group of people. Again, remember we talked about neuroplasticity. It is a term that refers, Jason, to the brain's ability to change and to adapt as a result of experience. This is what this is the thing that's happening within the psyche of Black America and the psyche of those rioters because of the deception of their perception of looking at white people as the enemy, but not knowing that groups like Warren Buffett, okay, Bill Gates, okay, and now as a side note, and I'm done, that Warren Buffett, and you and I talked about him last week, that Berkshire Hathaway owns 80% of the underwritten insurance policies of the companies that were destroyed and the properties, not all, but about 80%. Owned by Berkshire Hathaway. What does that mean? It means that the rioters are playing right into the hands of the deep state. We give you a brick from the Acme Brick Company that's also located in one of the locations in Springfield, Minnesota, which is 80% owned by Warren Buffett and 20% owned by the Moribund Group, Governor Jay Pritzker, who owned the Sikorsky 76B helicopter that Kobe Bryant died on. So these rioters, thinking from the science of emotion, rooted in proximity, what I call proximal abandonment. They grew up in homes. Either they had a father that was not emotionally available or they had no father at all. A lot of these rioters, they may be educated, but like you said on last week, just because you're educated doesn't mean that you are exempt from ignorance.
Right.
and because, you remember that. So not just because you have an educated person does not exempt them from the science of being ignorant, because the term ignorant means to ignore. What are they ignoring, the rioters? They are ignoring that this was not an operation because of racism. It was an operation to cover up a major drug trafficking ring involving the Minneapolis Police Department in connection to George Floyd, and also with the city government's complicity in the confiscation of this $1 million worth of counterfeit money. And could it be that the $20 counterfeit bill had the same serial numbers that was on the $1 million worth of counterfeit bills that came out of where? China. And Jason, this is my conclusion of volume 3 of the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion. So powerful today.
Yeah. And Bishop, we've got some people asking questions about that Acme Brick Company. It's owned by Berkshire Hathaway. And I called them in Frisco, Texas, because somebody had posted on Twitter that there were just some bricks sitting on the side of the road. And I called them and they said that they were ordered by a customer of theirs. And I mean, again, somebody could just say, hey, I'm a customer, deliver the bricks over here. We don't know if they're a legitimate customer. People who watch Crowdsource the Truth, who are construction contractors, said that that was ridiculous. Nobody would order bricks and leave them on the side of the road at the construction site. They'd be stolen. And sure enough, many of the bricks were stolen. And the person on the phone from the brick company said that, yeah, it doesn't look like the way a professional would deal with bricks. They just sort of pulled them out of the middle.
See, Jason, and this gets right back to the side that you had so powerfully articulated near the first half of today's interview, where a lot of your listeners are sending in messages. All the Jews were responsible for the creation of Antifa. Well, this is how Reinhard Gehlen, okay, and through Nazi intelligence, would recruit a few Jews to make it look like the entire Jewish race or diaspora in Europe was behind the creation of Antifa. Okay, it's the same thing with the Acme Brick Company. Now I know Warren Buffett with this Sunnybrook Farm persona, but he's a devil. Okay, so 80% of Acme is owned by Warren Buffett. The other 20% by Governor Jay Pritzker. Okay, the Mormon group that formerly owned the Sikorsky 76B helicopter that Island Holdings out of Van Nuys, California bought 3 years before the death of Kobe Bryant. I'm not blaming the Pritzker family. I'm just connecting dots, Jason, because if it looks like a duck, guess what? So my job is to connect the dots. The Acme Brick Company, and I was told on yesterday that the Springfield, Illinois plant closed down. If that's the case, it was within the last 2 weeks because they were exposed. Thousands of pallets worth of bricks all over America, and they're just telling you and I, well, they were ordered by certain construction companies or by that's a lie, Jason. Okay, and now Black people are beginning to wake up. Black people are exposing, right, the deep state. And this is my conclusion of volume 3 today, and of what we're calling and describing the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion, dealing with these shell corporations in and around the structure of Black Lives Matter and the Black Lives Matter Foundation. They're nothing more than shell corporations that are being used, not because Black people matter to the deep state, but because Black America is looked upon as a matter, a property, a piece of a matter, which is nothing more than a particle. Jason, this is heavy in connection to the 3-tier organization of the Blue Act Foundation, the Blue Act Charities Fund, and the Blue Act Civics Initiative that God had revealed to me to reveal to you on their website, that they're connected to the owners of GoFundMe. They're all complicit in this conspiracy of the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. What a powerful show today.
Yeah, very well done, Bishop. It's interesting that those Act Blue guys are connected to Stripe and some other things, and there seem to be very educated, sophisticated guys. It's also interesting to note that they're being paid by that company while they're starting other companies, which can be okay. But I just wonder what they're doing to help the charity that warrants paying them if they have other companies that they're starting. It's interesting. I'm going to present some of this information to Charles Ortel. I don't know if you've watched his show, but he is a sophisticated financial investigator, and he understands a lot of these things way better than I do. But Bishop, until next week, I would encourage our viewers to tune in to your radio show. People can get it on liferadionj.com/Gaiters, or if you happen to be in the New York and New Jersey tri-state area, Connecticut perhaps can get this as well, 92.9 FM. The internet's going to be the easiest way to listen to the Bishop, and you can support Bishop Gaiters' global spiritual revolution by going to paypal.me/GSRR Media Group and making a contribution there. You can support this show by going to patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth or subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. You're going to get access to a huge library of sponsor exclusive content. We've got another episode of More Pain coming up tonight at 8 p.m. for sponsors. Bishop, thank you for joining me. It was an excellent episode today. I'm looking forward to what you uncover next week.
It is going to be power-packed. We're going to go deeper, even into Black Lives Matter again, and all these Black organizations on the left for volume 4 of the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. And to your listeners, before we sign off today, I have them to check out the U.S. Army 12th Psychological Operations Battalion insignia or logo. Again, the U.S. Army 12th Psychological Operations Battalion insignia logo that reveals the Latin term mutio, okay, a capital Mutatio, which means mutation. And the second Latin word is enemy, capital Animi, which means animation. Okay. Mutation through animation. We talked about the Hollywood entertainment cartoon industrial complex some months ago. This is Psychological Operations 12, the U.S. Army 12th Psychological Operation. There you go. Okay. Mutation. We talked about that scientific term, epigenetics or epigenetics, which means the mutation or the gene becomes compromised because of trauma. This is a part of the U.S. Army 12th Psychological Operation Battalion insignia. Okay, this mutatio, which means mutation or transformation, and enemy is the acronym for the word animation. Walt Disney, they are changing the perception of the minds of American children because Walt Disney, that has 666 within their name, Walt Disney, multiple sixes, they are pushing the transgender agenda through Walt Disney. They're pushing homosexuality and lesbianism, okay, same-sex marriage, okay, and same-sex relationship. This is cartoons, Jason. This is a part of the U.S. psychological operation. In order to control America, we have to control and destroy it from within in order for the world to control America from without. This is the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. Thank you so much for a powerful program. Again, that 12th psychological operation, notice that, Jason, the truth is in these words, and we have to look up the languages and the dialects of Greek and Latin and Hebrew. And there's over 9,909 languages. Some say more, some say less. Over 14,000 dialects and over 33,000 accents. We must teach the people these languages through linguistics, these dialects and these accents in order for us to expose the paradigm of this manipulation and the paralysis of this emotion. That's so powerful. Mutation through animation. So powerful.
And Bishop, one last thing one observation I'll leave you with. I agree that these words are powerful, but we've always heard that an image tells us 1,000 words. And I haven't seen this logo before, but just in observing it right now, I notice it has north, south, east, west arrows pointing out, while these arrows are pointing in. Now, the 16-pointed star of the CIA is also the compass rose. And we've seen that in Peter Nygaard's jet. This concept of direction is obviously very important. And we have the words mutatio, animi, whatever that means. But that symbol appears in this version of the logo, which also has that rope with white, red, white, red. And then it's got some kind of like, I don't know, revolutionary patriot guy here holding a gun. But we've got this sort of like Aladdin's lamp in the center of this thing that we previously saw with the same logo. There's that Aladdin's lamp with fire coming out of it. But on this one, it sort of has that curl that's been identified in WikiLeaks as a FBI, a symbol of pedophiles.
Oh my God. And notice it also represents a form of a compass. Okay.
Yes.
This is where we get the term central or centrica intelligence or psyop agency. Okay. And notice the man with the musket. He has his left leg on something. I'm thinking of Derek Chauvin. I don't know why. Oh. Everything is a psyop. Everything that's built upon the tassel of the CIA that you see there, white, red, and that's on the foundation of the Central Intelligence Agency. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
Derek Chauvin. And quickly, Jason, I'm so sorry to keep you. For your
No, no.
listeners, if I can give them some homework, if they can type in what's in a name, psychological operations versus military. Again, what's in the name, psychological operations versus military. That's on www.armyupress.army. Now, what am I saying? It will show you 12 psychological, the top 12 psychological operations. Okay. Uh, every psychological operation represents a first special forces. All 12 are headquartered in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. Okay. And it has this Latin phrase, de oppresso liber. Okay. De oppresso liber. Now, it's very interesting, Jason, when we look at that term here, de oppresso liber, it is the motto of the United States Army Special Forces, okay? It means to free, supposedly, from oppression or to liberate the oppressed in Latin.
Right.
Again, as Bruce Lee said, when my enemy expands, I contract. When my enemy contracts, I expand. We have to think of the opposite of what the Central Intelligence Agency does. When they say go left, you go right. When they say go right, you go left. When they say stand up, you sit. We have to do the complete opposite of what the deep state wants us to do. Because in order for us to conquer the deep state, to know what they are thinking. They are thinking with the psychology of the serpent that goes back 6,000 years in Genesis chapter 3. The de oppresso labor. It actually means the oppressed liberators. In other words, the greatest weapon in the hands of the oppressor, Jason, is the mind of the. They're telling you who they are. And these 12 psychological operations, the top 12 out of the 1,000 of the Marines, the Air Force, or the Navy, these 12 psychological operations are the top 12 on the earth that's headquartered in Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And they are sent all over the world through psychological operations in every country and continent upon the face of the earth. Now, what the deep state would teach us, it means to free from oppression or to liberate the oppressed. But it's actually the opposite, Jason. They're not here to free people from oppression or to liberate the oppressed. They're here to bring in oppression in order to bind the people into a psyop of that being oppressed. We have to think, okay, through reverse psychology. We cannot think like they do, but we have to know what they are thinking in order to understand the paradigm of manipulation and the paralysis of emotion. The truth is in these Latin phrases, okay?
Yeah.
Oppression. It's so powerful here, my friend. Oh, I'm telling you, this.
And
I gotta say, this has been one of the most powerful interviews I've ever been a part of, and I thank God for you. Yeah, go right ahead.
likewise, Bishop, thank you. I'm flattered to hear that. Mel Chapman raises an excellent point that the genie in a bottle is a, I forgot her name, Christina Aguilera song, who was part of the Disney Mouse Club.
Wow, wow, man, oh man, and who is that other singer? Oh my God,
Britney Spears. Britney Spears,
yes,
yeah.
yeah, Britney Spears. But was she a part of the Mickey Mouse Club? All of
Yes,
these people?
she was.
Yeah, and I think also Justin Timberlake. I'm sorry, Timberlake. He was as well. all of these people are PSYOP operations, okay? This is the Gestalt theory, okay? This is what they call de oppresso liberation. They're not bringing liberation, but their form of liberation, okay, is enslavement. Again, their form, the deep state, their form of liberation, Jason, is enslavement, okay? This is how the Central Intelligence Agency, which is nothing more than a terrorist organization, it was never designed to topple governments. The CIA was never designed to do that. But now you've got deep state operatives, lifelong career officials that's been in the agency, some of them since the early 1950s. And these rogue agents are not liberating America, but they are terrorizing America in the form of the death of George Floyd. Again, this is volume 3 of the what I call the paradigm of manipulation in the paralysis of emotion. The truth is in these Latin words and all 1,000 U.S. Army psychological operations, okay? Because they deal with African people differently than they deal with Canadian people. They deal with Canadian people differently than they deal with Latin American people. Remember, what was that? The virus that hit Latin America a few years ago, the Zika virus.
Zika, yeah.
That's a biological weapon, Jason. But that
shrank people's heads or something, babies.
Yes, but it only affects children of Latin American descent, but it doesn't affect an African child or an Indian child or a Chinese child. These devils on the left, they have uniquely, meticulously designed biological and chemical weapons to infect, excellent picture there, certain ethnic groups in order to control them, okay? That's their form of liberation, but in actuality, those nations are enslaved. And if you don't toe the line that the CIA wants you to toe, they will take you out, okay? Listen to Vault 7, okay? They will take you out. And this is so powerful when we're talking about this, this manipulation and these the side of emotions. Powerful pictures that you're showing there, Jason.
I never saw that before. I didn't realize.
Yeah, and it's only affecting children of Latin and Spanish descent because when we talk about COVID-19, COVID-19 is not called COVID-19 because it came out last year. It's called COVID-19 because it is the 19th protein, pathogen, and strand within the severe acute respiratory syndrome family, where the Chinese biological system, through the Wuhan Institute of Biotechnology, the Wuhan Institute of Virology, and the Wuxi Pharma Tech, that one of their headquarters is 666 Goixon Road. And if your listeners can, just type in on .com 66 Goixon Road, capital Goxin, and find American companies like Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson. But the 19th pathogen of COVID-19 is a combination of the first 18 pathogens through reverse engineering, because the first 10 pathogens of COVID 1 through 10 was created by Chiron in 2006, sold to Novartis AG Group in 2006, and pathogens 11 to 18 was created by and through the Purbright Institute that's controlled by British MI6 with billions of dollars through the Bill and British COVID 1 through 10, and Purbright COVID 11 and 18 to 18 was sold to the People's Republic in China, Jason, in late 2008, December. Patient zero did not come from the wet markets in China. I mean, we can talk about that at a later date. Patient zero came from that 2018 UK-China conference on avian diseases. Tony Midget Fauci, where in 2014, $3.7 million was blessed by Barack Obama giving to the proteins, pathogens, and strands of what we now call the coronavirus pathogen 19. And each pathogen, each strand affects, it's like the Zika virus, each of the pathogens and strands of the coronavirus within the SARS family affects a Black person differently from a white person. It affects a Japanese person differently from a Vietnamese person. It's been meticulously designed to destroy the immune system of different people of different ethnic backgrounds. This is how demonic this is, my friend. And this is, again, a part of the paradigm of manipulation, the paralysis of emotion. What a powerful show today.
Absolutely, Bishop. Really excellent. So we'll be back next week and we'll carry on then. Thank you for another great show, Bishop, and thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you later tonight.
Thank you so much, Jason. We'll see you next week, sir.
Absolutely.